wind howled across the empty main street, dragging ribbons of dust through the air like the ghosts of the men who'd died here. The day was sinking fast, turning the sky a bruised purple, and my horse's hooves struck the ground with the weight of inevitability. She knelt in the dirt ahead of me, hands bound, chin lifted like she was the one in control. Even then, especially then, I thought she looked more like a storm than a prisoner. I swung down from the saddle, the boards of the saloon porch creaking behind me as a couple of drunks leaned forward, eager for the sight of a bounty delivered. My shadow swallowed her small frame. "On your feet," I said, voice low. She stayed where she was, eyes narrowing, lips curling into something between a smirk and a dare. I'd heard her name before, Elena Marquez, the kind of name that carried through saloon whispers and over the click of poker chips. Daughter of an outlaw, thief of the wrong man's treasure. The wanted posters painted her as dangerous, a snake in skirts. They didn't say anything about her being beautiful, but they didn't need to. Beauty in this land was more trouble than any bullet wound. She tilted her head, letting a strand of black hair fall across one cheek. "You're bigger than I expected," she said, her accent warm, amused. "You're smaller than I expected," I replied, hauling her to her feet with one hand. She didn't resist much, but when I turned her toward my horse, she twisted suddenly and sank her teeth into my arm. I grunted, half from the pain, half from surprise. "Guess that makes us even," she muttered. The barn where I'd caught her still reeked of gunpowder. I tracked her for 2 days across sagebrush plains and canyon ridges, following boot prints and scraps of fabric snagged on mesquite. She was quick, I'd give her that, smart too. But speed and smarts didn't mean much when you had a man like me behind you. Jed Callahan, though most folks called me Bear. I'd earned it in the war, when I was younger and meaner, scouting for the Union through Confederate backcountry. Size had its uses. So did knowing how to read a trail. The sheriff met me at the jailhouse door. He was chewing a toothpick, eyes scanning Elena like he was checking if she matched the wanted poster. "That her?" he asked. "That's her," I said. "She looks harmless," he muttered. Elena smiled sweetly. "I am," she said, and then winked. The sheriff didn't smile back. He had her locked in the back cell before she could try anything clever. The train east would come in 2 days, and she'd be someone else's problem. I stepped out into the street, my arm still stinging from the bite. A wiry old man in a torn coat sat on a crate outside the saloon, a bottle dangling from his fingers. He squinted at me like I was a puzzle. "That girl ain't what she seems," he rasped. "They never are," I said, already turning away. "No, Bear," he called after me, voice hitching. "She'll change the way you see the world." I didn't answer. Folks in towns like this loved their cryptic warnings. They made for good saloon talk. Night fell quick. I sat at the poker table in the back of the saloon, the lamplight throwing long shadows. I'd won a few hands, lost more, and was considering heading upstairs when I heard the first shout. The jailhouse bell clanged, sharp and urgent, cutting through the music and laughter. Chairs scraped. Men spilled into the street, pistols in hand. I was already moving, pushing through the door, boots striking the boards hard. Smoke curled against the moonlight above the jail. I ran. The air stank of burning wood and hot metal. 2 masked riders were already dismounting, rifles in hand. A third kicked the jailhouse door open, splinters flying. I didn't think. I drew my Colt and fired. The nearest man dropped, clutching his chest. Another swung his rifle toward me, but I put a bullet through his shoulder before he could pull the trigger. The third fled back toward the horses, cursing in Spanish. Inside, the place was chaos. Flames licked the walls. The sheriff lay slumped by his desk, groaning but alive. And in the cell, Elena stood with her back to the bars, watching me like she'd been expecting me all along. "You come to rescue me, Bear," she called over the roar of the fire. "I came to keep you alive," I snapped, keys in hand. "Close enough," she said as the lock clicked open. I grabbed her arm and pulled her into the street. The fire roared behind us, heat slapping my back. The last masked rider had remounted and was firing wildly, bullets kicking up dirt near our feet. I shoved Elena behind me, raised my gun, and squeezed off 2 shots. The rider jerked backward, his hat flying off, and tumbled into the dust. The sheriff staggered out of the building, coughing. "They weren't here to free her," he managed, spitting soot. "Then why?" I began, but the answer was already in my gut. Whoever sent them wanted her dead. The street had gone quiet except for the crackle of burning wood and the shuffle of boots as folks gathered at a distance. Elena's wrists were still bound, but she stood tall, her chin high. "Looks like you need to decide," she said, her voice steady. "Leave me here for them to try again, or take me with you." I looked at her, the fire painting her face in shades of gold and shadow. She was trouble. Every instinct told me to turn my back, let the law handle her. But instincts hadn't stopped those men from nearly killing her tonight. My horse stamped impatiently a few feet away, the reins hanging loose. I holstered my gun, caught her by the arm, and pulled her toward him. "We ride," I said. Her smile was quick and dangerous. "Thought you'd never ask." The saddle creaked as I swung up first, then hauled her in front of me. She leaned back against my chest like she'd been here before, and for a heartbeat, I wondered if the old drunk had been right. I kicked my horse into motion, the burning jail shrinking behind us, the road ahead swallowed in darkness. Somewhere in that darkness, someone wanted her dead, and for reasons I couldn't yet name, I just made it my business to make sure that didn't happen. The night air cut sharp against my face as the stallion pounded down the dirt track, each stride carrying us farther from the burning jailhouse and deeper into the unknown. Elena sat tense in front of me, her wrist still bound, but I could feel the pulse of energy running through her, half defiance, half something darker. She didn't look back. I did just once, and saw the orange glow shrinking behind us, a dying lantern in the belly of the town. Whoever wanted her dead wouldn't stop at one failed attempt. We didn't speak until the fires were well behind us. The moon hung low, its pale light throwing silver over the desert. My arm still throbbed where she'd bitten me earlier, a reminder that whatever she wasn't helpless. "You could thank me," I said at last. She gave a short laugh. "For saving my life, or for dragging me into yours?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure myself. By dawn, the horizon was a ribbon of gold. We stopped beside a rocky outcrop, where the shadows ran deep. I slid off the saddle, then reached up to pull her down. She didn't resist, though her eyes stayed on mine longer than necessary. "You planning to keep me tied up forever?" she asked. "As long as I have to," I said, loosening the rope just enough for her to move her arms. I handed her a strip of jerky. She took it without thanks, chewing slowly, her gaze scanning the empty expanse like she knew trouble was already on its way. The ground was too hard for sleep, but exhaustion caught up to me in short bursts. Every sound snapped me awake, the rattle of a pebble, the flap of a vulture's wings overhead. She didn't sleep at all. When the sun climbed, we were back in the saddle, moving along the riverbank where the water rushed and foamed against the rocks. The smell of wet earth clung to the air, a rare scent in this dry country. It was mid-afternoon when the river forced us into a crossing. The water was high from the spring thaw, fast enough to make the horse shift uneasily beneath me. Elena watched the current, her lips pressed together. "He's not going to like that," she said, nodding at my stallion. "He doesn't have to like it," I replied. I swung down, untying her legs from the saddle. The moment her feet hit the ground, she looked at me with something between irritation and challenge. "If you're planning to drown me, this would be the place," she said. "I'm not planning to drown you," I muttered. "But you keep talking and I might reconsider." The crossing was rough. The current shoved at us like it wanted to rip the horse's legs out from under him. Halfway through, his hooves slipped on a hidden stone, and Elena pitched sideways, with a sharp cry. I grabbed her by the waist, hauling her back against me, water soaking through both our coats. She twisted to look at me, eyes wide, not with fear, but with something sharper, more alert. "You drop me in that river, Bear, and I'll haunt you," she said. I almost smiled, but the cold was biting too hard. When we reached the far bank, we were both shivering. I built a quick fire under the cover of a cottonwood grove, the smoke curling into the late light. She crouched close, Her dark hair plastered to her face, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. The flames painted her features in gold, and I caught myself wondering how someone with that kind of presence could vanish into the lawless edges of the territory, unless she wanted to. "You think I'm what they say I am," she said suddenly. I met her eyes. "I think you're trouble." She smiled faintly. "Not the same thing." She broke off a small piece of bread from her satchel, something I hadn't seen her take from the jail, and handed it to me. "For the record," she added, "I didn't steal anything worth killing for." I studied her for a moment. "Then why's there a price on your head?" She glanced toward the river, her voice dropping low. "Because I took something they can't buy back." The words hung between us like a challenge. I didn't press her, though I wanted to. I'd learned in the war that some truths had to be earned, not demanded. We were back on the trail before sunset, the shadows stretching long across the land. That's when I spotted them. 3 riders in the distance, moving fast, their silhouettes black against the dying sky. They weren't wearing badges. The way they fanned out told me they were hunters, not lawmen. "Hold tight," I said, spurring the stallion forward. We cut into a narrow canyon, the walls rising high and close. The hoofbeats behind us quickened. A shot rang out, the bullet smacking into stone inches from my head. I pushed the horse harder, the smell of gunpowder thick in the air. Another shot, closer this time, sent a shard of rock slicing across my cheek. The canyon bent sharply, and I took the turn fast, nearly unseating us both. The riders were closing in when I spotted an old washout ahead, a tangle of fallen rock and debris. I reined hard, forcing the horse up and over the ridge. The landing on the other side was rough, but it bought us enough distance to lose them in the maze of gullies beyond. By the time we stopped, the night had settled in fully, wrapping the desert in a blanket of quiet. My heart was still pounding, and the stallion's flanks were wet with sweat. Elena was breathing hard, too, though she was grinning now, a wild spark in her eyes. "You do know how to make a girl feel wanted," she said. I shook my head, wiping the blood from my cheek. "They weren't trying to catch you," I said quietly. "No," she asked. "No," I replied. "They were trying to kill us both." For the first time since I'd met her, the humor in her face faded. She stared at me, the firelight from our small camp dancing in her eyes. "Then we've got a problem, Bear," she said, "because I know exactly who's paying them." Her words carried the weight of something final, something that promised more trouble than I counted on. And though I didn't yet know what she meant, I felt it in my bones. Whatever road I'd put us on, it wasn't the kind you turn back from. The moon cast the land in shades of silver and shadow as we moved through the narrow canyon, the stallion's steps careful over loose stone. Elena rode behind me now, her wrists free but her posture still guarded. I could feel the weight of her words from earlier. She knew who was paying to see us dead. I didn't push her. Some confessions came like gunfire, sudden and loud. Others took the slow turn of a key in a rusty lock. When the canyon widened, the remains of an old church came into view, its roof half-collapsed, the bell long gone. The place looked abandoned for decades, but I knew it would serve for shelter. I led the stallion inside what was left of the nave, tethering him to a beam, while Elena gathered scraps of wood from the floor. The silence here was thick, as though the walls remembered prayers and sins in equal measure. We sat by the small fire, the flames catching the edges of her face, the rest lost in shadow. "The man paying for my death," she said at last, "is Silas Gorman. He owns more miles of track than the government, and he thinks that makes him untouchable." I knew the name. Everyone did. Gorman's wealth was built on land grabs and broken treaties, his influence stretching from the mountains to the sea. I'd seen men disappear just for standing in his way. "What did you take from him?" I asked. She met my gaze without flinching. "My brother." The fire popped, sending a spark into the darkness. "He stole him first," she continued. "Took him from our father to force the sale of our land. When the deal went through, he kept him, called it leverage. I went to get him back. I succeeded. And now Gorman will kill anyone to keep me from taking the next thing I came for." Her voice didn't shake, but her hands tightened in her lap. I understood now why the riders hadn't been there to free her. They were there to erase her. And now me, by association. I leaned back, the heat from the fire washing over my face. "You're saying you still have something of his," I said. She gave a faint smile. "Not something. The truth. Enough of it to ruin him." Before I could ask more, a sound rolled in from outside. Hoofbeats, slow and deliberate. My hand went to my Colt. Elena's eyes flicked toward the door. A figure stepped into the faint glow of moonlight, a tall man, lean as barbed wire, with a weathered hat pulled low. I recognized him instantly. "Cal Riker," I said. "Didn't expect to see you out here." Cal's grin was humorless. "Didn't expect to be here. But I figured you should know. There's a bounty on your head now too, Bear. Dead or alive." The words landed heavy. "Gorman?" I asked. Cal nodded. "He's pulling in men from all over. Says the woman's a thief, and you're her accomplice." His eyes slid to Elena. "You must be worth quite a pile of gold." She didn't answer. Cal leaned in. "If you're smart, you'll hand her over now. Maybe they'll let you live." I stood. "You know me better than that." Cal sighed, shaking his head. "Then you'd better be ready. They'll be coming at sunrise." He turned and left without another word, his silhouette swallowed by the darkness. We didn't sleep. The night stretched long, the fire shrinking to embers. At one point, Elena shifted closer, her shoulder brushing mine. "Why not give me to them?" she asked quietly. "You've no reason to risk your life." I looked at her, the question sharp in her eyes. "I've got my reasons," I said, though I wasn't sure I could name them yet. Maybe it was because I'd been on the wrong side of a lie before. Maybe it was because I'd seen what Gorman's kind could do when no one stood in their way. Or maybe it was because, somewhere between chaining her hands and carrying her out of that burning jail, she'd stopped being my prisoner. The first shot came with the dawn. I was already on my feet, dragging her behind a fallen beam as splinters flew. The church walls shook with the force of rifle fire. Through a gap, I saw 3 riders circling, rifles glinting in the early light. My return shot caught one in the arm, sending him spinning from the saddle. The other 2 pressed harder, bullets punching through the rottenwood around us. "They'll box us in," Elena said. "Not if we move first." I scanned the rear wall, half collapsed, but passable. "Go," I told her. She hesitated, then darted for the gap, moving low. I followed, firing a quick burst to cover her. We broke into the open, the cold air burning my lungs. The stallion was waiting, ears back, ready to run. We hit the saddle together. The riders swung after us, shouting curses. The ground blurred beneath us as we tore across the flats, the wind screaming past my ears. One of them closed the gap, his revolver raised. Elena turned in the saddle, snatching my spare pistol from its holster, and fired. The shot was clean. The rider pitched sideways, hitting the dirt hard. When it was over, the horizon lay empty again. We slowed only when the land dipped into a shallow valley, hidden from view. I slid from the saddle, leg burning where a bullet had grazed me. Elena was off in a heartbeat, pulling a strip of cloth from her skirt to press against the wound. "You're lucky," she said, voice tight. "Another inch and you'd be bleeding out." Her hands were steady, though her eyes flicked up to mine once, just long enough for me to see something unspoken there. "You didn't have to save me back there," I said. She smirked faintly. "You didn't have to save me either. Guess we're even." We sat in the shade for a while, the stallion grazing nearby. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. "If you help me get to Gorman's rail yard, I can end this. Not just for me, for every family he's bled dry." She didn't plead. She didn't have to. I looked out at the sweep of the land, the mountains in the distance, like the backs of sleeping giants. I told myself I didn't care about causes anymore. That was before Elena Marquez. "All right," I said finally. "We'll take the fight to him." Her smile was small but certain. The sun was climbing, and with it, the weight of what we just decided. There was no turning back now. Gorman had set his bounty. We were about to make him regret it. The rail yard rose from the horizon like a fortress of iron and smoke, its black skeleton silhouetted against the dying light. The smell reached us first, coal dust, hot metal, and the acrid tang of oil. Freight cars stood in long, glinting rows, their sides painted with Gorman's name in bold, arrogant letters. Lanterns glowed along the perimeter, casting narrow circles of light that made the shadows between them feel even darker. Somewhere beyond those shadows, Silas Gorman waited. We left the stallion tethered in a dry gully and crept along the outer fence, the wind rattling the chain links in a nervous whisper. Elena moved ahead, her body low and deliberate, the pistol I'd given her gripped tight. I followed, every step slow enough to keep the gravel from crunching. A locomotive hissed nearby, steam coiling into the night like the breath of a sleeping giant. She led us toward the southeast corner, where the fence had been warped by years of heat and neglect. One good shove, and the chain gave way. We slipped inside. My eyes swept the yard, rail cars stacked with crates, a line of warehouses, and above them, the main office with its glass windows burning gold. That's where Gorman would be. We moved through the maze of cars, the iron wheels towering on either side, the air dense with heat from the cooling engines. A guard rounded the corner ahead, and I pulled Elena into the shadows just as his lantern passed, its glow brushing her cheek. When his footsteps faded, she leaned close enough for her breath to warm my ear. 2 more patrols before the office, she whispered. We caught the second guard near a pile of coal, his back to us. Elena's shot was silent and quick. One clean movement, no hesitation. The third went down to my blade, a flash of steel and a stifled gasp before he crumpled into the dark. There was no room here for mercy. At the base of the office stairs, the smell of cigar smoke thickened. Through the glass above, I saw him, Silas Gorman, larger than I expected, dressed in a black waistcoat, his hair silver and slicked back. He leaned over a desk littered with maps and contracts, the kind of paper that could crush towns as surely as dynamite. We climbed, our boots silent on the wooden steps. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Gorman's head lifted, his eyes narrowing as they took me in. Then they slid past me to Elena. His smile was slow and venomous. "Well," he said, "if it isn't the runaway and her giant." "Call off the bounty," I said. My voice carried no heat, only iron. He chuckled. "You think you're in any position to make demands? I own this land, these rails, this town. You're just 2 more names I'll pay to have erased." Elena stepped forward, placing a bundle of papers on his desk. "You don't own the truth," she said, "and I've got enough of it here to see you hang." His smile faltered for the first time. "Forgery," he said, too quickly. She shook her head. "Signed testimonies. Land deeds you altered. Witness statements from men you thought were loyal. All of it bound for the governor's desk by sunrise." His hand dropped toward the revolver on his hip. I was faster. My shot tore through the air, hitting the wood inches from his fingers. He froze, his face twisting with rage. "You'll never make it out of here alive," he snarled. The first explosion came from the far end of the yard, a sharp crack, followed by the roar of fire. Elena's brother, hidden until now, had lit the charges we'd planted on the supply cars. Flames leapt into the sky, and the yard erupted in shouts. We moved fast. Gorman lunged for his gun, and I caught him across the jaw with the butt of my Colt. He went down hard, blood smearing the polished floor. Elena didn't look at him twice. She was already heading for the door, the bundle of papers in her grip. Outside, chaos reigned. Guards ran in every direction, the air thick with smoke and the sharp sting of burning coal. We pushed through the maze, keeping low, the heat on our backs. A bullet tore past my ear, then another closer. I turned, firing twice into the haze. Somewhere in the distance, a whistle screamed, a train trying to pull out before the flames reached it. By the time we reached the fence, my leg was screaming from the wound I'd taken days before. I stumbled once, and Elena caught my arm, steadying me. "Come on, Bear," she said, her voice sharp with urgency. We cleared the gap in the fence and slid down into the gully, where the stallion waited, stamping and tossing his head at the smell of smoke. I swung into the saddle, my muscles aching, and pulled Elena up in front of me. The boy, barely more than 16, appeared from the shadows, his face streaked with soot but alive. We rode hard into the open country, the glow of the burning yard fading behind us. We didn't stop until the first pale streaks of dawn brushed the horizon. My leg was soaked in blood, and every step of the horse jarred it like a hammer. Elena slid down first, then turned and looked up at me. "Off," she said. When I didn't move, she reached up, her hands firm at my waist, and pulled me down. I stumbled, and she caught me, her arms surprisingly strong. "You were supposed to be my prisoner," I murmured, half laughing through the pain. "Now look at you, carry me." She smiled faintly, her face close enough for me to see the soot on her cheek. "Guess the chains don't work the same anymore." We rested in the shade of a mesquite grove, the stallion grazing nearby, the boy keeping watch. The air was warm now, smelling faintly of dust and sun-baked earth. I lay back against the trunk, my hat tipped low, and let the quiet settle in. In that stillness, I found the words forming before I knew I meant to speak them. "She was meant to be my prisoner," I said, my voice low. "But somewhere between the chains and the freedom, she became the reason I keep breathing." Elena didn't answer right away. She just sat beside me, her shoulder against mine, watching the horizon like she could already see the road ahead. And I knew then that whatever waited out there, lawmen, bounty hunters, or the ghosts of our own pasts, we'd face it the same way we had faced the fire, together. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Some chains are meant to bind the heart, not the hands. V.